All right, so I have seen Disney's, I guess, remake of Haunted Mansion. They have made a Haunted Mansion before this new one back in 2003, I believe, starring Eddie Murphy. And that one is not very good, so it makes sense that they want to redo it now, almost 20, actually, not almost 20 years later, with a new cast, new story, all that stuff, because their Haunted Mansion ride is probably one of the most popular rides at Disney World. So obviously they're going to try to keep that IP going in movie form. So they gave it another shot here. And unfortunately, I did not like it very much, which is real bad for me because I love the vibe of the Haunted Mansion at Disney, where it's spooky and uneasy, but you know that you're going to be okay. And that's kind of the nice thing about whenever Disney, especially old-fashioned Disney, did scary stuff, is that you felt kind of grown up when you were little, watching and taking all this stuff in, is that it is scary in the moment, but you know you're going to be okay by the end. And Haunted Mansion dials that up to 11, where it's really scary in the moment, and some of the ghosts are scary, some of them are not, but you know you're not like in mortal danger. And so that's a really tricky vibe to get through because there's going to be some people complaining that it's not scary enough, and there's going to be other people complaining that it's too scary. So going into this movie, I think they towed that line fairly well until the end. I will spend a lot talking about the end. No spoilers, don't worry. But until then, they do a pretty good job of towing the line between kind of creepy, but also like not too creepy. There is one jump scare that got me pretty good, just because it wasn't what I was expecting it to be. And so that purely the surprise of that and the shock factor really got me. So applauds to the director and the writers for that. That was pretty good on their part. But yeah, so it's a really good vibe movie. It's it has a really good color palette. You really do. I really love the feel of the mansion itself. It's very colorful and dark at the same time. The costumes are all on point for all the ghosts and the characters, and each character has their own specific look. It's really well done. So on that standpoint, they did a really good job with this movie. Where this movie fails is the writing, unfortunately. The story is not super strong. The basic plot is very generic, very much like we have to stop the bad guy. And the characters, only a couple of them are really well developed. I know. Only a couple of them are developed at all. And when they are, it's not super strong. Although I will have to say, Lakeith Stanfield, who plays the main character in this movie, you see him in the trailers. He is really good in this movie. He's been in a starring role in stuff before, like some indie-ish films, like Sorry to Bother You, a couple of years ago. He was in Knives Out as one of the police detectives, a smaller role there. But this is probably his biggest mainstream role that he's had so far, and he nails it. There's one scene in particular where he has to emote a lot, and he does a really good job there. So he's definitely a standout here. Danny DeVito and Tiffany Haddish are fantastic as always. Owen Wilson is doing his Owen Wilson thing, which is fine. I am an Owen Wilson fan, so I do like seeing him do his stuff. But there's nothing really special here. He's just there being Owen Wilson. Rosario Dawson is also in this movie. I love Rosario Dawson, but she is also just kind of there. There's not really a plot for her character or any character development. She's just kind of there, unfortunately, because Rosario Dawson is underutilized a lot. But it is nice to see her in this movie, so that's good. But yeah, I mentioned I was going to talk about the third act a little bit. I'm not going to review anything major, but if you think the smallest hint of stuff that happens in the plot is a spoiler, then you can stop watching now. But I was enjoying this movie fairly well until the third act. The third act is where it falls completely apart, and it's where the movie kind of realizes that we're about to end and we haven't given characters any character arcs, and we haven't really set up any good conflict between people. So we're going to do it all at the very last minute here. And the ending just felt very rushed and very weird. It also didn't help that a lot of the ghosts' CGI just was really bad near this part. It just didn't look like real at all, unfortunately. But the bigger problem than the CGI is just the fact that everything just felt rushed together. Owen Wilson's character in particular they try to give him a bit of a character moment, and it just comes out of nowhere, like, oh, okay, we're doing this with you. Something that's hinted only once earlier on in the movie and is not developed throughout the whole movie, so it makes it feel out of nowhere. The kid also has a moment like that where they reveal something about him that is hinted at once, and again feels completely out of nowhere. And then you think they're gonna go in this direction with the kid, and it's resolved in 2 minutes. And then they take Lakeith Stanfield's character and they do something almost the exact same thing they did with the kid character, they do with him. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, we just saw this with the kid. Why are we seeing Lakeith Stanfield go through it now? I don't understand. We just saw this. So it seems like they had two different endings and they liked them both, and so they try to put them both in the finale, and it didn't work for me at all. Another thing that didn't work for me in this was that the fact that the movie is called Haunted Mansion, and yet during the day they keep leaving the mansion. Felt it would have improved the spooky and mystery nature of the movie if our cast of characters were all stuck in this mansion and they couldn't leave until they had solved the problem of whatever that problem is. But instead, during the day, characters are free to leave whenever they want. Now, they make it clear by night they have to come back to the mansion. But the movie's called A Haunted Mansion, and there's a whole subplot that takes place in a different mansion that's not haunted, where it becomes national treasure for a while. And so that kind of frustrated me, of like, this movie's called Haunted Mansion, and yet I'm not feeling like we're spending enough time in the Haunted Mansion. This movie should just be called Ghosts or something like that if we're not actually going to focus on the mansion itself. So that was a bit of a bummer for me. So yeah, not really a recommendation on my part. It's fine as a vibe movie. It's a great movie to have on the background if you just want to watch it silently. Again, very pretty with great color palette. A couple of good performances by our actors here, but the writing just kind of does this movie a lot of disservices, especially in the third act, where everything just seems to be thrown against the wall and to a really bad effect, unfortunately. So, yeah, but, go watch it yourself if you want and form your own opinion.